Does this work? Oh, score it does. Okay. Now, when you see someone smile, what do you see? You might see a nice smile like that. You might see your colon capital D, and you might see your sort of pensive quotation mark with just a nice grin. Now, here's the thing. This could be someone just politely smiling. Could be a complete lack of happiness altogether. This could be someone particularly excited. Now, when I say excited, I don't mean excited in the sort of tomorrow's my birthday excitement. I mean excited in the sense that you would have adrenaline or a sugar rush or maybe a bit of a dopamine surge. Maybe you're watching a comedy and you laugh. Maybe you're being tickled. Maybe something very short, not long lasting, but usually quite potent. So, very excitable, but an hour later, you may just be none. So, over here, we have contentment. Now, when I came along to this, I assumed that the talk was probably, or the panel was probably about contentment. Now, this is the longer lasting. This is the usually less potent, but it does last quite a long time. Usually somewhere in between the stable personality traits and the really short term. So maybe a week, maybe a year, maybe half your lifetime. It's not intrinsically part of you that you're a happy person necessarily, but rather you are happy and it could last for a period of time. It's a stable trait, but it's not an actual intrinsic trait. All right, so that's the first thing. When we talk about happiness, we are not just talking about one thing, obviously. It's just a word in the English language rather than something that is defining a single concept, but it's actually defining a whole range of things. You can have this at the same time as that. You can have neither. You could have both. There are a couple of other things that modify it even further. Things like bemusement, things like ridiculous happiness, things like absolute ecstasy. There are completely an enormous number of variables that change small aspects, very small aspects of what happiness is. And when we use the word happiness, we mean all of them, essentially. But for the moment, let's just pretend that we're just talking about contentment. There are various fields within contentment. Contentment for a day, contentment about certain things, but let's just pretend that it's a nice, solid construct. Lies. All right, so second thing, what is happiness in terms of how can we think of it? There is a cause and an effect in everything that goes on in your brain. So we have a cause leading to happiness. Now the question is, if you have a different cause but the same effect, is it still happiness? Notionally, if happiness is just the effect, yes. If you are happy, you are happy. If something made you happy, it's irrelevant what that something is, if you're just talking about what happiness is. So when we talk about happiness, we really have to isolate ourselves to what do we mean by happiness. For example, a broken leg is still broken whether it was hit by a hammer or a wrench. It's about the effect. All right? Here, we have this funny little arrow, and that's what I'd call personality. Let's say there's a comedy, and it has Ben Stiller in it. Half the people that go see it probably won't laugh at anything in it. But half of them will pay an enormous amount of money, which keeps Ben Stiller in clean socks. But if we think about it, what is it that makes some people enjoy it and some people not enjoy it at all? Comedy is essentially the art of bringing happiness. Usually just this happiness, but for some people that live in comedy, say the actors, it can cause contentment. It can cause a long lifetime of feeling like you're making people laugh, which is, in every sense, contentment. But here's the thing. Personality can decide those things. Let's say, for example, you want to live an altruistic life. You spend all your time and money trying to help the poor and trying to make them feel better, but you spend no time or money at all on your family because they're generally pretty happy on their own. Okay? So you're looking at sort of people as people, regardless of whether they're in your family or not. On the other side of the coin, let's say someone's really passionate about their family and wants a lot of safety and security for their family. So they make a lot of money, they try and get success in life so that their children can be successful. They are both reasonably noble ideas of what gives you contentment. But one person may not be contented by living the other's life. Personality preferences, desires, the intrinsic parts of what makes you you, those things end up determining what will make you happy in terms of the cause and gives you a better effect. All right? So 2 final things. Should I be happy? Let's say, how many here know the word Schadenfreude? A few. Okay, let's say a third. Now let's say that you have, I'll just write something up for no reason whatsoever. Let's say that someone's tripped over and you giggle a bit. Whether you should or should not laugh about that is really a question of not only cause, but the nature of the cause. And those questions are called ethics, essentially. Whether someone feels happiness from, killing people or feels happiness from saving people doesn't change the nature of the happiness so much as it changes whether the happiness is just, whether it's pure, whether it's all these words we use for it. But those questions aren't really questions about what happiness is. They're questions about ethics. So I just want to make clear that there are a couple of different things in terms of philosophy, in terms of happiness. So you have the ethics, but then you also have this, as Aristotle said, to name drop in a big way, you have the good life. Can you have a good life without being happy? If you spend your whole life, say, what's a good example? I don't have one. Let's say there's someone who spends their whole life, every time they get some money, they give it straight to the poor and needy. And they really hate being altruistic, okay? Every second of every day, they're just, my parents told me to do this, and I'll do it because, they said I should, and I don't really want to think about anything else, but it really sucks. And so they give all their money to the poor, but then after 80 years of living on their deathbed, they go, actually, it was kind of a pretty good life. Now, whether that's plausible or not is not the question. Whether it's conceptually different, whether you could conceptually have a good life without happiness, means that there are 2 different questions here. So is happiness important? Is there meaning to happiness? Does there need to be meaning to happiness? All these questions are really good life questions. For example, the existentialist Sartre and all those people, they were really into being really rational and trying to figure out questions of life, and they weren't as happy as, say, the hedonists who just went out and had a lot of pleasure all the time. But the question of who had the better life is really a quite difficult one. And these aren't small questions just because I wrote up one word and just because I put them next to emoticons. These are very, very, very big questions, but they're not the question of today. And I just want to make clear that when we talk about happiness, we're talking about a fuzzy concept, a concept that has to be looked at per se, as itself, all right? But whether it's meaningful, whether you're happy for a reason, whether it's true, pure happiness or not, these are questions about the outside area around happiness. And so I just thought I'd spend my time doing semantics and science. So I may as well. And thank you. Okay.